Becoming a successful professional speaker is a journey. How do you find that first stage, the next stage, and then the bigger and better stages? I'm Lee Hayes, your host. My co-hosts and I are here to guide you to a more successful speaking career. You're listening to Path to the Main Stage podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to Path to the Main Stage podcast. I have a co-host today who's going to answer that question that you're suddenly going to realize is on everybody's mind. You don't realize you're thinking it until I say it, and then you're going to go, oh my gosh, this is my question. So let me tell you a little bit about Kate first. Kate O'Neill is widely known as the tech humanist, a Thinkers 50 ranked management thinker, global keynote speaker, author, and executive advisor. Kate helps leaders navigate emerging technology with a clear-eyed, human-centered approach, especially as AI reshapes our trust. Keep that in mind. She talks about decision-making and the experiences that people live through at work and in the world. Kate is the founder and CEO of KO Insights, a strategic advisory firm focused on improving human experience at scale in data-driven and AI-led interactions. She is also the author of 6 books, including Tech Humanist and What Matters Next, and she's got a book in the oven. We're going to talk about that later. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you, Lee. What a joy to be here.
I'm excited to have you because we were talking a little bit earlier and you mentioned a question and I went, oh my goodness, this is the question. This is the question. And the question is, let's just start right here. Are speakers going to be obsolete in a few years? Are they going to be replaced by bots, AI, holographs? Is this career tanking?
Yeah, it's such a fun place to start, isn't it?
It's a provocative place to start because I didn't realize that question was in the back of my mind until you said it. And I went, oh my gosh, you're right. Are all of my speakers who are on the wall, are they just going to be bots? Are they going to be, avatars that are just jabbering? Help us. What's happening to the world of speaking with AI? Are we being taken over?
Yeah, and it's funny. I think you're so right in saying it's this question you probably didn't think of, but now that you hear it, you're probably going like, wait, what? Yeah, right? And I think the thing is, it is not a question of will AI replace speakers? So let me start there. Okay. And the question really is like, which parts of speaking are really just about delivery of content, and which of them are about relationship building and trust building and presence, right? So clearly there are tasks that we do. Actually, let me back up and just say this. One of the things I speak about very often is the future of work. Only the future of work is a silly term for a much more complex topic. Like the future of work is this label that encompasses what I jokingly refer to as 7 badgers in a trench coat, because it is the future of work, the future of jobs, the future of titles and roles, the future of labor relations, like employer-employee relations. It's the future of productivity and tasks and all of these different kinds of things, all rolled into one convenient label, but that convenient label disguises a lot of complexity beneath the surface and makes it really hard to make predictions or understand what's really going on there. And I would say if you think about what I just said and apply that to speaking, it's incredibly similar. So if we think about speaking in the industry
is a career and
sense,
a job,
right?
and
Like
work.
it's right, exactly. Lee, you know this better than most, that like how many different things, if we say the future of speaking, we're actually talking about at least 7 badgers in a trench coat, right?
Yes.
Well, and they're unruly badgers.
I'm going to interrupt 1 second. So they talk about the 80-20 rule. And with speaking, I understand it is a 2-98 rule. And I get that from talking to bureaus who say that only 2% of speakers make up 98% of speaking. So I think everything that affects the workplace that you talk about and how AI is going to affect that is, if anything, is magnified in the speaking career.
Yeah. I think, too, one of the things that's really important is to understand that Keynote style thought leadership, the stuff where it's like, it's really about creating a mood and like being someone who's really in touch with the energy of a place, that is not likely to go anywhere anytime soon, because there's something so intrinsically human about being embodied enough to understand what people are feeling and sensing and kind of creating that energy for people. That is something that if people understand that element of the job, they're going to want humans doing that, right? The other part, though, is the kind of work that is distillable, essentializable, commoditizable. That part is so easy to automate and replicate with an AI. And so here's my hot take, right? You ready for my imagine I'm on the subway
it's like
and
hot
Kareem,
wings. I love it. Okay, hot
right?
takes.
So Kareem is interviewing me for my subway take. Here it is. One word positioning is out. Two word positioning is in.
Wow, you've got to unpack that for me. You
All
lost
right.
me.
Yeah, because you're like 100% agree, disagree. I don't know. You got to give me more. If your positioning boils down to one word, it's too broad, it's too hard to position for in generative AI searches, and it's too replaceable in a coming wave of generalized automation that can do content delivery.
Okay, so if I said my topic is leadership.
Leadership, trust, resilience, any of these, they're just too broad, too generic to really own in the marketplace of ideas. But if your positioning requires two words, maybe even three, but two, that to me signals juxtaposition. It's like you have a real tension that you've recognized exists in the world and that it needs to be addressed. And in all vanity, I will share, like, tech humanist is that for me. Like, to be able to say, like, technology and humanity exist side by side and nobody can quite figure out how to make them play nice together, that is the tension that I think plenty of other people are recognizing and sort of taking their own piece of in their positioning, but it's been my positioning for a long, long time. And so I think that's the opportunity, is to look at what tension is it that you're actually speaking to in the world that needs to be addressed, and then claim that two-word positioning, because those talks are great and they're not going away anytime soon.
It's interesting when you talk about going away. Remember COVID, which happened, somehow 100 years ago, and yet it was yesterday. Every event planner I talked to at the time said, Lee, live events are over. They're over. Everything now is going to be online. Everything's comfortable with this. We're never going back to live. Do you know that at least 90% of the events that I place speakers with, they don't even have a web component anymore. It's just live.
Yeah.
And people can purchase the review of it. They can get the package, but some of them are live streamed, but most of them is just in person. And it's funny because we were never going back, right?
Right.
And we are. So what are aspects that do need to change, though? So obviously what you're saying is there are certain aspects of a speaker that are dynamic, that are personal, that don't go away. But I think there's a lot that we need to change and adjust and keep looking forward. What are some of those components?
Yeah, and it's so your observation about the never going away hybrid talks or virtual talks is a really, really important one, because I think, are you familiar with this term, the K-shaped economy? Like the K-shape.
I am not.
My
Please share.
attempt to make a K shape.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, for everyone, she was making a K. If you're not watching
this is my
the
hands.
video.
One's pointing in an upward direction and one is pointing in a downward direction. If you look at a chart that talks about the economy, oftentimes it splits into two lines, one going up and one going down. And that is to suggest that both things are true, right? Some groups of people are experiencing upward mobility and some groups are experiencing downward mobility. And I think with hybrid and virtual events, there is a K-shaped reality there, because I think there are plenty of events that have come back, 98% maybe even have come back fully to in-person presence. But I think there's quite a few who have recognized that there is a more cost-efficient way to go, and that there is something there that makes it more tangible, more sustainable for them, and they're going to continue doing virtual and hybrid events. Also, if you think about the climate crisis and about the reconciliation that we're going to be having in the not too distant future with air travel and carbon emissions, it is inevitable that there's going to be some reckoning with that says like, hey, events are a pretty big contributor to the carbon footprint of individuals who participate in them. So maybe we should do a hybrid option at least and move in that direction. So I think where this leaves us, taking us back full circle to, what does this mean for speakers in their future readiness? One thing is, be thinking about when you're in person, how do you make the most of that? How do you build the relationships? How do you foster the kind of networking that's going to build your business and also differentiate you as the kind of person who truly understands why we're in person? Like, why are we having this in person? Bringing the energy, creating those relationships the way only you can when you're in person. But also be aware that in the not too distant future, probably 5 years from now, 10 years from now, certainly by 10 years from now, we're very, very likely to be facing a reality where hybrid events are once again the dominant situation because of remediation around the climate crisis, unless the air travel industry has suddenly innovated and figured out a way to deal with the fuel situation, which, fingers crossed, I really hope so, because I love travel.
So. Yeah, well, we'll get a lot of electric cars waiting for that first electric plane, I suppose.
Yeah. And I know they're experimenting, but it's not ready for prime time. And I think this is just something where speakers will do well to think, how do I, starting in 2027 maybe, how do I build my content in such a way that it is ready for the in-person event as well as the virtual event? How do I do that in a way, now that I have the chance to think in advance? None of us in COVID were ready for the pivot that we had to make. A lot of us were really taken aback and sort of thrown into it and had to learn our way through virtual keynoting and that sort of thing. You learned a lot as you went. But now, if you have the benefit of foresight to be able to say, what would I do if I wanted to start building towards something that would be an awesome in-person experience and a really, really great online experience too, so that option exists and you're not trading off quality and not trading off, what you think you could really offer as a value add.
And you make a really good point, which is a lot of the events I work on are associations or things. They try to bring people together, but you make a very good point that a lot of business, like corporations who are now mainly remote, they are throwing virtual events.
Yeah,
because
so it's
their people are everywhere. So
right.
Very important. Now, you talked about some of the changes. So obviously when COVID hit, speakers suddenly had to figure out virtual, and you're right, it was a big learning curve. Everyone had to buy new cameras and figure out their backgrounds and the horrendous lighting and all these things. What are some very specific moves that speakers need to make in the world of AI? What changes should they make, for example, to content, or should they make any changes?
Yeah, this is so important, and I'm glad you're asking it, because I think that people are misjudging the role that, first of all, AI, of course, is this umbrella term. We're talking about, once again, we're unpacking the badgers in a trench coat, and there are lots of them. AI is an umbrella term that refers to a whole set of technologies, and a lot of times these days people are thinking of it synonymously with ChatGPT and its kindred, like Claude and Gemini and Perplexity and so on. It's important to make that distinction because there's a role that generative AI, including large language models like Claude or ChatGPT, they can certainly play a role in helping you in crafting new content and, kind of getting you past sort of, what are those called? Writing blocks. Having a speaking block there.
Writing blocks, that's exactly.
Ironic. They can help you, but you obviously have to be very present in that process and not delegating that process to the tool to create your content for you. You may be writing something and go I cannot figure out how I want to tie this together. Claude, help me think of, 3 ways that I could take this. And then what I often find is that it's so much better to learn from a bad example than a good one, because you might look at them all and go none of these. I wanted none of these as the next thing I was going to say, but it might jog your brain enough to be what I really want to say is this. And that's in my mind, one of the most like pure ways to use these tools is just as a kind of internal tool for your own thinking, writing, content creation. But there are plenty of ways to use them that sort of maximize your footprint, that sort of thing. I think that the key is you got to stay in the driver's seat. You got to maintain, only you understand what your purpose and mission is as a speaker and what kind of an impact you're trying to have in the world. And you can't do that if you've delegated the process of your most important function, which is creating the content, that the message that gets out there on your behalf and creates that first impression with people or builds the relationship with people who already know you and trust you. And you don't want to sacrifice the trust that they feel in you for just time and time savings. It's not a worthwhile ROI. So that's one way that I would frame that. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. Sorry. No. I was going to say, with the generative AI, you made a good point that, how do I connect to these pieces? What's another way to say this? Sort of creatively elevating your talk. But what do you think about speakers who feel they can create their content with generative AI? Like, give me a keynote on leadership.
Yeah.
There are some people writing books that way now.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that we're in a very young, immature stage of using these tools. They only came out for public consumption. They've been around for a while. Various versions of them have been around for a while. But the ChatGPT era of, public use of these tools is only since November 2022. That's only almost 4 years ago. And that's just not long enough that we have our feet under us in terms of how to use them well. But already we've been through several generations, I think, of people knowing what common tells are in AI-generated writing. And the moment people feel like you have used generative AI to create a message that's supposed to be coming from you, from your heart, from your experience and your expertise, it's an undermining thing. Now, that said, there's a legitimate place for, like I said, there's a legitimate place for using these tools. I think it's going to require a discernment and a judgment that is so careful and so present. And I think we have to err on the side of not allowing the output to be used for public consumption without a heavy hand in editing. My thinking on it is, I use AI tools a lot and have for years, well before ChatGPT. I've always used generative AI tools to help me write. Not always, but since like 2017, let's say. And they're incredibly useful for, like I described that situation. I'm writing, I hit a barrier and I just want to keep going through. So like, what's the next thing I'm trying to say? Nope, not that. Now I can keep going. Or, give me 3 versions of this, and then maybe I composite, like, I like the opening of that, the middle of that, and then I'm going to make it sound good together. And those kinds of things are still very much how I use them today. In fact, even just today, posting a LinkedIn post, I was having Claude, kind of create it. And then once it created 3 versions, I took one of those versions, rewrote it, posted the rewritten version, and then took what I had written on LinkedIn and gave it back to Claude and said, here's what I ended up posting to retrain the skill around LinkedIn post creation, because this is my style. It's warmer, it's wordier, it's more human, and I want my style to constantly evolve in my AI skills. So there's a way to do it that it's helping you along, but you're still staying in control of what you're putting out there, and you're the one who's really thinking, is this the way I'm trying to connect with people? Is this the impression I want people to have of me and what I care about and how I care about them? That I'm willing to, create a shortcut that's, not really putting the work in. But if you're putting the work in, if you're showing up and you're saying, all right, well, no matter whether an intern created this for me or ChatGPT or whatever, I'm still the one reviewing it. I have to be the one that gives the no-go and really puts the editorial voice on it to make sure this is really what I'm trying to say. This is the purpose of this message, and this is how it's going to come across with that care and with that quality, but not just spit it out, and good enough, let's go. Publish it, and we're off to the races.
So you already answered part of this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You had talked about maximizing your impact or maximizing your presence, and you talked about how Claude helped you on LinkedIn. What are some other ways that you can take what's in your heart, as you called it, and really maximize your presence by using these tools? How do you get out there?
Yeah, I think, you have the opportunity to do a sequence of things that can be incredibly powerful. Like we couldn't have done 5 or longer years ago, like just to be able to think, all right, well, there's a prospect who wants me to speak, and the industry is manufacturing, and I want to show them that I'm paying attention to what matters in their industry. So I'm going to go to Perplexity, and I'm going to say, give me a brief on some of the top issues for managers and leaders in the manufacturing space right now. Let's say your topic is around leadership, and so you want to, but if it's 2 words, right? So it's going to be like trusted leadership. I don't know, something like that. And so you're saying, like, what are some of the issues that someone who's concerned about trust and leadership in the manufacturing industry might be confronting right now? And you're going to get a great brief. Perplexity is a very reliable tool for research that does very little of the kind of fake news, that we see other places. So you can rely on that for the most part. What that's going to give you is something that you can then feed into Claude or ChatGPT or whatever, and with your own prompt, your own brief that's very clear, like, here's what I'd love to be able to express, that, I want to show that I'm looking into their industry, that I care about what's on their minds, and here's some research, and you give it that brief. And then it's going to help you figure out how to create a draft that you can send over as an email. You want to be in control of that, though. Again, like staying very present, very in the driver's seat of that process, so that then you can really own the knowledge and own the relationship that's going out there. It's no more synthetic than if you had 5 years ago gone to Google and researched and read a bunch of things. It's just making it simpler and really pulling it for you. And then you're able to kind of get through the ugly stage of drafting the email, but you got to be there and make sure that you're saying what you want to say, and that you're, communicating it in a way that feels authentic to your relationship building process. Once you've done that, I think you start getting a handle on, the kinds of scale that you can bring to authentic connection and relationship building. That's not the stuff that the CD-SEME stuff Lee and I have talked about, the kinds of emails we both get inundated with spam with, and I'm sure everyone listening to this right now does too. The bogus stuff that makes it seem as if like, oh, I read your book, What Matters Next, and it really moved me. And like, no, it didn't. You're obviously an LLM generated message. Like, this is not authentic. But if it's clear that, someone has taken the time to pull something together and said, look, hey, I really enjoyed our call the other day. I've given some more thought to how I can help you. Here's some thoughts that I've gathered together. Tell me if any of these make sense to you. Would love to follow up with another call. And so what you're doing is just creating that interstitial kind of stuff that helps stitch together real life communication and real life relationship building with stuff that's actually educating you in the process and bringing you closer to the prospects that you're working with and the clients you're working with.
Good advice, absolutely. Now, what about talks themselves? I've had a lot of speakers ask me, should I add tech to my talk? Should I bring more information about, how my material relates to tech or whatnot? How should speakers be adjusting their actual content to keep up with technology? Hopefully my question's making sense, but
yeah,
it is in my mind.
It makes sense to me. And I think this is where AI is this kind of double-edged sword, because it is very possible with AI tools, with generative AI tools, to create incredibly personalized and incredibly customized versions of talks. And it's incredibly possible to lose yourself in the process. So I think where I have experimented, and my team and I have experimented with doing more customization, more stuff that, sort of speaks to the industry that we're in, and the client's particular needs. I think you can go really far with that and then realize you've maybe gone too far, that it's maybe not bringing something that's universal enough. Like there's something, I'll tell you, this is something I can draw a parallel to. Lee, you won't know this about me probably, but in a prior life, I was a songwriter in Nashville, and
I didn't know that. We gotta unpack that. Okay.
Yeah, so I never had big hits or cuts with big artists, but I learned a lot in the process. I love writing songs. But one thing I learned through the educational system of writing songs in Nashville is there's a process during a song, the process of writing a song, you want to write from as personal a place initially as you possibly can. And then when you've written that first draft that is extremely personal, extremely specific, you may be using, words that relate to like the town you grew up in, like very, very specific. Then you want to make a pass through that universalizes things, that pulls out some of those specific references so that they can land better with a wider variety of people. And then once you've removed those specifics and gone general, you want to make another pass and insert specifics and try to figure out, like, okay, where did I go too far? What do I want to go back to the original specific that I had because it was unique and it was like relevant and kind of creates a bond with people? Or do I want to leave it as this more general thing? Or do I want to insert a different specific that may not be my specific, but is a specific people can feel the specificity of? And I know that sounds like it's really convoluted, but I think it really plays a role in being able to understand, look, I'm going to try to create a specific answer for this industry, but what I want to actually be able to do is pull back to this view that says, look, everybody's dealing with this, right? I speak a lot about digital transformation, about AI, sort of changing the way companies are automating their workflows and that sort of thing. I could speak specifically about what's happening in, book publishing or beer brewing or whatever the client is that I happen to be speaking to. But I think that they benefit an awful lot by knowing that this is a general problem that everybody is facing. And then sometimes they're able to draw better insights if I bring an example from retail or if I bring an example from, over here. So I think there's a process that's pretty similar where it benefits us to pay attention to the specifics that are happening, and it benefits us to think in a customized way, but to deliver in a way that's really about bringing insights and commonality and sort of a sense that you're not alone, like other people are dealing with this, and here's some of the ways, and allow the listener, the audience, to take away their own version of what it is that they're hearing. And I think for me, that's what keynote speaking really is about, is the opportunity to be this person who kind of sees a pattern and then inspires the audience member to connect their own way into that pattern, as opposed to spelling it out for them and giving them exactly, specifically the 5 steps you need to take walking away from here. They're probably not going to do it. But if they make their own connection, they're going to do it.
I'm going to go completely off track now. I would like to talk about influence. So you have an event coming up. It's right around the corner. And I'm bringing this one specifically up, sorry, not just because you were there, but because influence is important for the speaking community. Can you tell us a little bit about influence?
Yeah, for folks who are listening and don't know, Influence is the National Speakers Association's annual big conference. It's the summer conference, and it's the biggest one that draws people from really all over. There's such an emphasis in the last few years on international attendees even, so it's incredibly useful to be able to connect with hundreds and hundreds of your fellow professional speakers, or if you're still on the come up, people who are aspiring to be professional speakers. But it's a wide range of people across a wide range of topics and levels and industries and so on. So a great gathering. It's happening in Austin, July 24th, 25th, 26th, I think are the right dates, something like that.
Something like that. If not, look it up online. Yes.
Yeah. And that's where I'll be doing a session on future ready speaking. So exactly what Lee and I are talking about today, we're going to be examining in a lot more detail. So hopefully folks who are hearing this, who are thinking, I don't know, I have a few questions I would like to get answered, you come to the session and we'll be able to dig into that.
All right. Is there any little nugget that you can share that you're going to be sharing at Influence? A little preview of something that would help our emerging speakers?
Yeah. So one of the things I'll share is it's funny, it ties back to this COVID discussion, because when COVID hit and a lot of speakers were thrown into chaos, one of the questions that came up a lot was, around positioning, around, how do I position myself when, there's such a sort of upheaval in the landscape. And I came up with a model that's really similar. If you're familiar with the Ikigai model of, it's a classic sort of Japanese strategy of, what you do well, what people pay for, and I can't remember the third one, but it's very similar to that, where it's saying the positioning idea for speakers that I published. So here are the three questions that are if you picture a Venn diagram with three intersecting circles, one of those circles is, what is your unique experience and your credibility? Like, what do you have uniquely? Like, I was one of the first 100 employees at Netflix. Not a lot of people, literally only 99 other people can say that, right? And so I can draw from that, and I'm always going to draw from that. Even though it's 25-year-old experience at this point, it's still fun and still relevant. Number two, in one of the other two circles, what do people pay to learn? Like, people don't pay to learn everything. I mean, you might be really good at knitting, and you might find an audience that wants to pay to learn knitting, but it's probably not going to be a very big audience, or it's not going to be a very lucrative audience, as opposed to people who want to learn sales skills or leadership skills or that sort of thing. And the third circle is, what are you endlessly curious and passionate about? In other words, with no other incentive other than you are just going to do it anyway, what are you going to keep refreshed on and be on top of and become potentially the world's leading expert on? And when you see those three circles come together, it's at this place where you have an X factor. You're uniquely qualified, people are willing to pay to learn it, and you're going to always stay up to date on this topic. And then the beauty part of this is you actually find at the intersection of each of those two circles and the exclusion of the others, really useful ways to take that and apply what comes out of the intersection there. So for example, what is your unique experience and your credibility, and what do people pay to learn? That tells you some event themes that you could be exploring and looking for, like where are the events that you could be targeting to speak at. The intersection between what people pay to learn and what you're endlessly curious and passionate about are media hooks you can be using to reach out to media and get quoted like crazy about these topics. And then what you're endlessly curious and passionate about and your unique experience, those are content ideas. You could be writing blog posts and articles all day long about the ways that you bring unique experience to the things that you're reading about. And wow, I read this new thing that's breakthrough in science, which reminds me of 20 years ago, I was learning about this thing in my previous job, and you've got unique content that you can share around that. It's an incredible opportunity. I'm going to share a download that relates to that. We're going to talk a lot more about that. We're going to talk about how to use that and my questions, insights, foresights model from What Matters Next, along with AI to help you. And we're going to build a 2027 through 2037 positioning strategy for the speakers who attend.
That is to be able to look forward 10 years. Worth the ticket right there. So
I'm not guaranteeing that it'll hold up. You're going to have to revisit it, but it's going to at least give you some direction.
All right. You got a book in the oven. I know. I heard a rumor that you're working on something. Can you give us a little hint, a little insight as to what might be in there?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna start by asking you, have you noticed that the world seems a little weird right now?
I'm sorry. A little weird? Yes, I've noticed a little weirdness. I've noticed a lot of weirdness. Yes, vehemently yes.
Yeah. So I often start my keynotes by sort of surveying the room, tell me if these statements resonate. Like, things just seem to be changing faster all the time. People will laugh and like put their hand up. Like, the future feels increasingly uncertain. Oh yeah. The hand goes up. And then I say, like, everything is just feeling a little weird right now, to be honest. Both hands, I swear to you.
We're waving. Yep.
Almost every audience lately, both hands go up from people. And there's a big laugh. I think it's such a relatable feeling right now. So I'm working on a book that deals with what happens when the world gets weird faster than we can make sense of it. When, we've got AI making content just so abundant, and meanwhile trust is becoming scarcer and scarcer, and reality just feels itself increasingly unstable. So the question behind the book is, how can people and organizations stay grounded and keep their agency and make good decisions when everything is accelerating? And so it's about designing systems, organizations, and experiences that keep people oriented and empowered, and building the human skills we need most, which are sense-making, discernment, and trust.
Okay, so if you know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff now, but I'm willing to bet when you first started out in speaking, it was a little less clear. What is one thing that you would tell past you? What would you tell very young you? Obviously, you're still young, but very young you.
Thank you.
What one thing would you say to that Kate?
I think the thing that I would say to that Kate luckily already appreciated, which is that relationships really matter. That one thing that AI cannot replace is the sense that you can build with another person, that I see you, I appreciate you. Lee, you and I bonded over needing haircuts at the beginning of this call. That's not something you're going to banter with ChatGPT about. And it's very human, it's very real, and it's very authentic. And you and I will probably remember it the next time we talk. You'll be like, oh, I just got my haircut. That's a thing we're going to carry forward. And those kinds of interactions really, really matter. And they matter in the speaking industry because you're dealing with people who really value it. Like, people are in the events industry oftentimes because they really like getting together in person. They really like building relationships with other people. And if you turn out to be somebody who doesn't do that very well, it's going to be a real disappointment for people. So I'm not saying if you're an introvert that you're screwed, and I'm not saying if you're not good at that there's not ways for you to improve. But if you feel that somewhere within your makeup, in your DNA, you are a person who really likes making other people feel good and feel seen and build relationships, you're going to thrive in this business. And,
I'm going to quick plug here for introverts. Several of my speakers up here see themselves as introverts, and I agree that they absolutely are. But something I've got to remind you as an emerging speaker, if you're an introvert, is introverts are really, really good at one-on-one conversations. And speakers are really good at one-on-one conversations because the audience is not a group, it's a lot of single individuals. So just throwing my introvert plug in there that you are not screwed, you are fine. You have to deepen that one-on-one relationship, which is so necessary nowadays.
That's brilliant. That's a really good takeaway on it. And I think there's ways for extroverts to fall down on the job too. So I think this is really not about, classically where you get your energy. It's so much about how much attention are you paying to making sure that you're building up the people who need building up, and that you're creating the right kind of, mesh of relationship building such that it can build to something else. I did an event earlier this year with the American Red Cross, and it was such a great event to do. I was so pleased to do it. We built a really unique event, and that has led to referrals. It has led to a case study, a success story out of that organization. It has led to building another event is bringing me in to speak and bringing in the person that I worked with at that event so that we can record a live podcast on stage so that I can interview her live on stage about what she's doing and what we were able to do uniquely in that event. I'm just saying, if you're there, if you're present, if you're showing up in a way that's fully engaged and wanting to serve and wanting to leave the organization or the audience better off as a result, it is going to pay dividends for you and your career.
Well, thank you so much, Kate O'Neill, for joining us today. And it was last minute, and I'm so glad we got this in before Influence. And everyone out there, please, if you have the chance to go to Influence, do go. Go next year. But that is a great place for speakers. That's where you're going to meet, connect, network, and really learn more about this industry. So thanks so much. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review. If you didn't like it, you can leave a review too. I would love to hear from you. Thanks so much, Kate.
Thank you, Lee.
Thanks for listening to Path to the Main Stage. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And for full video episodes, check out YouTube. If you want to be a successful speaker, you need to make it happen. My co-hosts and I are here to help guide you. But if you need more help, please check out pathtothemainstage.com, where we can connect. And until next time, keep sharing your voice, keep showing up, and keep taking your path to the main stage.